We do not even have our own point of view. And you hear most of us pretending to be using their own minds. You know, from my point of view, and this person has had their capacity to even locate themselves disabled. You can't, your capacity to locate yourself in time and space has been disabled. How can you have a point of view? It has been disabled through epistemicide. And one of my brothers calls it epistemic terror and violence. This thing that you euphemistically call colonial education or miseducation, let's call it exactly what it is. And that is epistemic terror and violence. Because the epistemic sphere is a heavily contested sphere. Because now, the Magna Carta to power is definition. The power to define is cardinal to all forms of power. The power to define is cardinal to all forms of power. Now, let me tell you the instrument, because we have to identify the instrument that has been used to met out on you and me this epistemicide. The instrument that has been used is the mind of a European that is left-brained.
Yeah. Yes.
The left-brained, and I'll explain the left-brained part and the function that this emphasis, this highlight is serving to this discourse. And you may be asking yourself, what does white people being left-brained have to do with this? It has got everything to do with this. It has got everything to do with the schizophrenic society. I'm actually being lenient to even refer to us as a society because we have even ceased to be there. The European left brain had them developing a mind that fails to interweave things or find interweaving, interlinking to things that an African mind was able, to find those interweavings in. And because this left-brained European mind only knows how to engage in differentiating, because it is an out-of-balance cerebral spirit devoid cognition or spirit deficient cognition, because it only sees differences. That's what the left brain does. It recognizes differences. Because they are not balanced, they then become segregative. They segregate on everything in which they identify differences. Tina in differences, we identify interweavings. We don't see separations in differences. That is why things that we could easily conceptualize as interweaved, they separated. That is why you have lawyers today who are trained in law, but who are so aloof, oblivious, ignorant to the fabric, chemistry, mechanics of the very society that the law purportedly is about ordering. But you have not studied it. And you study an instrument that is purportedly about ordering the society that you have never immersed yourself into studying its anatomy, chemistry, mechanics. Not only that, even going as far back as studying the mind that has engineered it, because that is also not innocent. Which university offers a course in social engineering? You know why there isn't? And there's only social sciences. The reason is social engineers themselves have social sciences as outposts, epistemological outposts, guarding the society that they've engineered from disintegrating. So that's why you only get exposed to social science, produced knowledge, produced and packaged knowledge. You are cut off from even identifying and analyzing the mind that has engineered the society that requires the knowledge that you were told you need in order to function within that society. Who created this society in the first place? If you understand the mind that created the society, you'll understand the content of the curriculum. Because what they are feeding you with is intended to entrench ideas that will set you on a path, that will land you on a destiny that is relative to the objectives of the social engineers. Sociologists are saying, societal norms. There's no such thing as societal norms. That's what the society has taught you. The society never teaches anyone anything. Because the society is a construct itself. The society is engineered itself. So, you need to understand the mind that has created the epistemological content in your various so-called disciplines. Disciplines are nothing but fractures of a mind that has been fragmented from conceptualizing things as whole, from conceptualizing everything as connected to everything. The fractures of that disintegrated mind now translate into disciplines. One fracture is disciplined from interweaving or from finding other fractures. That's why they are called disciplines. What discipline are you in? Meaning, what fracture of knowledge that has been disciplined from striking the connection with other fractures of knowledge are you in? That is what people are asking you when they're asking you, what discipline are you in? So there's no such thing as law, politics, dichotomy. If law is about maintaining and ordering order in the society, then the study of law cannot be aloof from the social, political, cultural preconceptions that have gone into the engineering of the society that law is about ordering. Are you following?
Yes, sir.
With the above statement as the backdrop to the present paper, looking into the world, not only in terms of what is observable, but also what it stands on, it is contentiously submitted that law is nothing but an instrument of power.
Yes.
Crystallizing values predefined by either social consensus or imposed preconceptions of an hegemony. As principles, rules, legislative prescripts that, it is further argued, cannot be paradigmatically neutral to politics. Now, let me share you something from my current work, where I'm actually sharing an observation that will help you to see this epistemological holism that the African mind is supposed to be having in its engagement with knowledge, acquisition, dissemination, absorption, etc. In my upcoming literary offering, entitled Unshackled, Stepping on Toes, a case for the reorientation of African consciousness, pages 49 and 50 of the manuscript. But the work, the food is ripe in the pot. It's due for publishing. But I'm sharing with you, from the pot. I share the following observation in this work about power as a multidimensional phenomenon. Power is manifested and expressed multidimensionally. Firstly, the spiritual-cultural dimension of power, knowing yourself and developing a worldview that encapsulates your essence to ensure the emergence of an authentic being in your existence, giving our consciousness a directional aspect culturally. Gog Kani, earlier on, quoted Mama Marimba Ani as referring to culture as one's immune system. Very, 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 illustriously so. And it is a very salient point that she has made. And you think you should be doing anthropology and not law to be immersed into this. But people are intricately cultural. If you have consciousness, consciousness has to have directional aspect to it. And that is culture. Additional to it being your immunity, it is the directional aspect to your consciousness. It is how you cultivate and orientate yourself to existence. Culture is the perpetual trademark that you are giving yourself. That's how you mark your own vibrations once you have studied them, which will inform you what knowledge you will need and what purpose that knowledge is going to be serving. So we acquire knowledge without having identified the corresponding real need this knowledge is intended to serve, apart from money. So it is not really knowledge acquisition. Giving our consciousness a directional aspect culturally, this is the root of definitional power. Secondly, the educational dimension of power. By this I mean with the power to define, producing knowledge that responds to and serves values encapsulating our essence and our needs as defined in terms of such values, and establishing a systematic and institutional framework through which such knowledge could be preserved and disseminated. Thirdly, we have the political dimension of power. Here we talk about issues of governance for the maintenance of a properly organized and ran society. This is the administrative and coordinative aspect of power relations. Politics. Let me repeat what I've just said, the last part of what I've just read. Politics. This is the administrative and coordinative aspect of power relations. That is why people with clashing coordinates in this regard are bound to clash. Do not, correspond. Vis-a-vis power, we are bound to clash. Remember, coordinates serve, the function of helping you navigate to the intended destiny. Now, somebody else's destiny could be your subjugation. if my intended destiny depends on you being subservient to me, there will be clash of coordinates. And when there's this clash of coordinates, you call that power struggle. Or people who are lost in the illusion of abstract universalism. They would say things like, no, you know, we were colonized purely for economic reasons. Yeah. This is just a struggle for survival. No, I mean, this thing is all over. Any people that finds itself in a survival mode would do that, would do what white people did to us. Do you know, this is the danger of abstract universalism. That deluding world of colorlessness, where people will tell you about the insignificance of race. When we have race problems, our problems are race problems. Well, class consciousness, class analysis, there's some white poverty and black subjugation are not political commonalities. White poverty, impels the sufferer to seek more money. But my subjugation impels me to engage in a war against those who have subjugated me. The class struggle analysis bull crap must be occluded from our mental universe. We do not have political commonalities with non-Africans. Yes. You. And your comrades in Palestine included, for whom you pledge solidarity in your marches. And you have never said anything about your brothers and sisters in West Papua who are being brutalized by Indonesians. But you know how to march to the American embassy, to the Israeli embassy, against what they're doing to other Caucasoids like themselves. Okay, and I found I needed to sidetrack a little bit on that. It just came out strongly. Then you have, I spoke to the political dimension of power. Fourthly, you have the legal dimension of power. Let's talk about the legal dimension of power. This has to do with making laws that are reflective of the agreed values of the people, lest the system gets compromised with legitimacy crisis. If laws that are promulgated are not reflective of the agreed values of the people, the very first rule of law is violated. We do call that thing law. They have superimposed almost everything. I mean, my ancestor warrior, Frances Cress Wilson, when she speaks about white supremacy, she speaks about it, her diagnosis is on point. It permeates all areas of people's activity. Law is one of them. White supremacy. Law is one of the areas of people's activity that white supremacy has permeated. There is no such thing as legal thought. You must think like a law student. You must think like a lawyer. There's no such thing. Human mind does not function that way. An example, a classic example of schizophrenia among people who suffer from academitis is you hear a person, from the same subjectivity of their own mind, saying, we engage in we have a conversation on a subject, and you raise a point that I disagree with. At the same time, I say, yeah, but from the you coming with a sociological point of view, and I said, but from the psychological point of view, I would agree with what you have just said. But sociologically, what kind of this is a dichotomous mind. Strike a blow. And you look for schizos very far. You look for them very far. You don't see them in yourselves. When I dropped out from my legal studies, that was the only attempt that I had done in trying to get Urugu certification. I'm not talking coloniality here, I'm talking colonialism. When you say coloniality, you're talking about a colonial template, as though we are only left with a template and it has been emptied with the content. I'm talking about white invasion, terror, violence, because that is what it is, and it continues incessantly to be meted out. Africa, under these dislocating conditions, is virtually guaranteed to remain in perpetual subservience to the anti-African imperialist agendas of this world, under cognitive domination by white people. Cognitive domination, which is a precursor to physical domination, which has almost become an autopilot. The latter has almost become an autopilot because of the strides that they have made in the former, and that is cognitive domination. The power to define still lies with white people. Earlier in my presentation, I mentioned the fact that we are victims of epistemicide. We speak from the epistemic content that fosters the disorientation of our consciousness. We speak from that position of dislocation when we speak. That definition that we are talking about, in a rainbowist political system and culture, it actually supports the rainbowist hegemony that we are under, which in my view has to be obliterated completely. It is one of the you are actually pointing to a symptom. Why do we have this kind of definition of racism? Who is the master definer? The master definer is either white or an African person who is a surrogate thinker. Because there's also surrogate intellectualism, where you are talking to chocolate-coated white people. They do exist. Actually, they are the deadliest. So, that is why you do have such definitions that are characterized by discoloration. There is bound to be discoloration in these definitions, because the intention is to make race problematic appear insignificant, to dissect, to talk to address. So this epistemic hegemony has to be overthrown. Has to be overthrown. And the second has to be overthrown, and is not going to happen by appealing to the moral conscience of definers, usurping definers, by the way. And it's so easy, if I live by your definitions, if I live by your conceptual frameworks, your worldviews, your philosophical outlooks, your values, it is so easy for you to be liberal.
Yeah.
Because I am your shadow.
Yeah.
You have nothing to worry about. Who worries about their shadow? So, these things are not even going to happen by individual volitions of white people admitting to guilt. It requires an exclusively black space. Exclusively black space, where we occlude anyone who is non-black from the discourse. It is simply in obedience to the first law of nature, and that is self-preservation.
Yes.
Every sensible family does that.
Yeah.
Closes doors when there's a sensitive matter to be tabled. Now, you asked about expropriation. There's an article that I wrote on this. My take was, you see, the concept of expropriation itself falsifies our struggle history narrative, and that is of an invaded and dispossessed people.
Yes.
Expropriation is an act of state. When you cry, we want expropriation with or without compensation, you are actually crying that the state must act in a certain way. Has our struggle been about some state taking land for public use, for public interest? Our struggle has been about black people, being the indigenous people of the land, repossessing their land.
Yeah.
The nomenclature is very important. This nomenclature is a falsifying nomenclature. We should get it out of our minds, thoughts, tongues.